Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are just a few days into the 2035 to 2036 offseason after our A's missed the playoffs for the first time in the past 5 years. And unlike some previous seasons, and quite honestly, unlike the run up to the trade deadline this past season, we haven't, unfortunately, been able to do anything too impactful in the trade market thus far. I agree with the assessment of many viewers that trying to add another pretty solid arm to our starting rotation for this offseason should be our primary goal. Unfortunately, just haven't come across that opportunity set yet. So what we've done is several trades, primarily to kind of right-size the finances on this team, even with the fact that we traded away Colt Keith, who was going to be making more than anybody on the team this upcoming season. Still had some moves that we needed to make as far as clearing up some money on the books with the additions of guys like Harris and Brailovsky and Patterson in recent trades who are in their arbitration years and going to be making some decent money next year. So we have made a few deals, but largely they were salary dumps. Unfortunately, the net result is that we've already lost 2 points in fan interest, so that's not positive by any stretch of the imagination. Talk quickly about what we've done so far in these early days of the off season, and then we'll get into we're going to have going on in the development lab this off season, as well as start moving through awards season, where probably not going to be winning quite as many awards as we did a year ago, but still expect some hardware to be headed our players' way this off season. The first thing we did was we have traded away our longtime center fielder, Luis Lara. He is now wrecked physically. He's in 2 final years of his contract that are both team options. And with Harris, Ortega, Cabral, Ramos, the guy we picked up from Seattle, coming back and likely holding down a DH slot for us. And then the right-handed hitting outfielder, Luis Taris. We felt like Lara still had a little bit of trade value, and he's just a pure glove at this point. He has had seasons in the past when he's been a more than useful offensive player for us in the early stages of his career. But we now have 4 consecutive years where he's had a 92 or lower WRC plus, and that number's been in the mid-70s 3 of those 4 seasons. With the fact that he's now wrecked physically, he's going to be 31 in just a couple of weeks. And he still did have some trade value because of that great defense. We moved on from Mr. Lara. In the trade that we made, we got some cash back, and we also got a decent reliever back from the New York Mets, Kamani O'Banner. Not going to be a huge difference maker, I don't think. The 25-year-old is fragile physically. He's been used primarily as a reliever in his major league career, but he does have 3.5 pitches. And we're going to have him in a development lab program this year trying to work on some of those off pitches. So he is a guy who could be in the mix as a back of the rotation starter for us if we need him to be. But I think that ideally we'd like him to be in a bullpen role for us. A more significant move that we made to free up some salary money was trading away Luke Little, who's been our closer for the last 2 years. You may remember we signed him to a 2-year, $26 million deal last offseason. He did a really nice job again for us as our closer this year. But with some of those additions we've made to younger players who are out of their minimum salary years, $13 million for a veteran closer was just not a number that we could justify, unfortunately. So, of course, we ended up trading him to the Dodgers. We also had to trade minor league first baseman Esteban Magdaleno to the Dodgers as well. Don't view him as a big-time prospect. The 25-year-old did hit 23 homers in Double-A for us this year, but he's 25 years old and he hasn't made it past Double-A. He's bad defensively. He's bad on the base paths, and he's got home run power, but not much else. We got some cash back, and that was really the primary asset that we got back. We got a shortstop, Pat Maloney, but he's heading into arbitration years, going to be making about $1.5 million. Although we're intrigued by his glove, we feel like our infield is good enough that we're not going to make an offer to Maloney to bring him back. And then we got a minor league pitcher, Mike Carbone, who at least has 3 option years left. Worried about the control with him, but we basically took what we could get to get Little's contract off the books without retaining much of it, and unfortunately that meant, other than a little bit of cash, we weren't going to get much back in terms of actual assets, and we had to include Magdaleno, a middling prospect, just to make it work. And the loss of Luke Little was 1 point of the loss in fan interest that we've experienced. Actually, for context, Lara and O'Banner completely offset each other. So we were still at 68 after that trade. Dropped to 67 after we moved on from Little, and then a couple other trades. Another salary dump, which fortunately got us some cash in return, in addition to minor league second baseman who's got 3 option years left, but not a big-time player in Nate Heyer. But we moved on from Abraham Camacho. We signed him as an international free agent to that front-loaded contract last offseason, and he was pretty brutal this year for us. We thought maybe he was a long or medium-term answer at third base for Colt Keith, but he's not going to get that opportunity with us. And with the additions of first base / DH types like Brailovsky and Ramos before the trade deadline, playing time was going to be hard to come by for Camacho on this team, so making $5.7 million. Cubs were happy to take him on board, but basically didn't really get much of anything in return there, except for some cash, which obviously helps us with the fact that we're still the second lowest budget in all of baseball. Another trade that we made, and this one was really a salary dump as well. We got catcher Oswaldo Linares, who is a guy that we have already waived and DFA'd, or I guess more accurately, we're just not going to be making him an offer next year to come back in the organization. And we traded away Caden Dana. He was due a team option for $4 million, and we were going to have to give him a $400,000 buyout. So although we're not going to keep Linares around by trading him to the Marlins, at least we saved the $400,000 from Caden Dana's buyout. Unfortunately, Dana was also somewhat popular, so that was the second point of fan interest that we dropped to go down to 66 in fan interest. We have also made some other decisions. Gabe Brewster is a guy that we traded for right before the trade deadline this year with the White Sox, and really didn't work out. 4-4 record with a 5.20 ERA. 11 home runs allowed and 27 walks in 62 1/3 innings. And although he's a fan favorite and very popular, he has no trade value at all, although we actually had to get up resources to bring him on board. He has literally no trade value, and we're not going to make him an arbitration offer for next season. I mentioned already Maloney, the guy that we brought on in, I believe, the trade with Little. We're not going to make him an offer as well, but Kevin Patterson, R.J. Cope, Jaden Boakai, Andy Brailovsky, Brady Harris, and Luis Taveras all have received offers from us. With one exception, they're all arbitration offers. We have made a longer-term offer to Kevin Patterson. I don't think he's a big-time starter for us, but he was 4-2 with a 3.06 ERA after we brought him over this year. Did allow 8 home runs in 61 2/3 innings, so that's not so great. But I think he's a solid 4th or 5th kind of starter. We're going to have him in the development lab to try to maybe turn him up a notch into a clear number 3 starter this offseason, and he wasn't looking for crazy money. So we've actually made a medium-term contract offer to him. We will talk about that if and when he tells us how he feels about it. But hopefully that extension will work out. So with the fact that we traded away Caden Dana and we're not going to make an arbitration offer to Gabe Brewster, that did mean that we have decided we are going to bring back next year Jamie DeVore. He had been pretty good for us, quite honestly, his first 2 years in Oakland. He had a real rough year in the rotation for us this year, and we ultimately dropped him into the bullpen. He's making more money than either of those other guys. Caden Dana, who had the $4 million option, and Gabe Brewster, who'd be making about $2 million, will be making. DeVore is going to be making $6.5 million next year, so he's definitely more expensive than either of those guys. But over his 3 years in Oakland, he's still been an above-average pitcher for us. He's still averaged over 2 WAR a season for us. He's been pretty effective, even though it just didn't work this year. And given that there's no obvious trades that I can find for a better pitcher right now, and I don't know that there's going to be any great opportunities that emerge over the next several months of this offseason. We're going to bring him back and kind of have him penciled in as a perhaps 5th starter for us this upcoming season. If he ends up in the bullpen, it'll be a little bit expensive, but with the fact that we traded away Little, traded away Dana, traded away Lara, moving on from DeVore, we have opened up enough money that I think it's, or moving on from Brewster, we have, I think, opened up enough money that bringing DeVore back is not going to crush us financially. Honestly, with the trades that we've made to clear things up, as well as some of the cash that we've gotten back, we're in a much better position than we were a few days ago. We've cut payroll a lot. We've got legitimate scouting and development budgets set aside, and we still will have money to spend this offseason potentially. It's just going to kind of need to be focused on guys with 1-year contracts. Still, we'll continue to peruse the trade market and try to figure out who, if anyone, we can bring onto this roster to improve the pitching staff. Right now, we're honestly kind of hoping that things work out with Doug Weiss in the development lab. His stuff is not imposing, but his movement and his control are both better than average. He's the guy we picked 2.5 years ago out of Austin Peay. He's had a pretty steady rise through our farm system, and we're hoping that with a good trip to the development lab this year, his stuff and some of his off pitches may be a little more effective than they are today. And that with Ferris, Patterson, and DeCaro kind of penciled in as our top 3 starters, some mix of Weiss, DeVore, and maybe some magic player we're going to find in the trade market, or maybe there'll be a international free agent who's interesting, could potentially fill those final couple spots in our rotation next year. But I don't love that there's not anything realistic to do right now, but for a 24, 25, 26-year-old pitcher who was just, kind of a solid 3 or 4 starter type, even offering them Jake Ortega straight up, teams were just laughing at us, saying that we weren't being realistic. So, some of the pain of a difficult trade setting that makes things a little less realistic at times, but at least hopefully also generally prevents me from completely abusing the AI. So that's kind of a high-level look at what we've done over these first few days of the off-season. So we'll highlight quickly what we're doing in the development lab this year. Since last season, we've been running with 20 programs, and we're going to do that again this year, all in the name of science, mainly just to kind of understand this new feature of the game better by getting a much bigger sample set of players going through these long programs. Bobby Garland, who did a really nice job for us, is a lefty pitcher this year, has poor control. Don't think there's really a lot of untapped potential to tap here. I mean, according to our scout, there's no untapped potential here, but hope that maybe we get lucky and we get an outstanding program and he improves his control. Alejandro Landin, potential rookie of the year. I'm going to work on his plate discipline. Kevin Patterson, as we touched upon, secondary pitch improvement. Jake Ortega has 2 straight years where he has been unsuccessful in a strength and conditioning program. At 28 years old, I'm not going to give it a 3rd straight year where we try it. Supposedly, there's still a little bit of untapped gap power potential. Given his speed, he does generate a lot of extra base hits. Maybe we can get a few more extra base hits out of him, since that's not the most difficult program in the world. New third baseman Rodney Mesidor has a little bit of untapped home run power. We're going to try to harvest. Mike Curtis, secondary pitch improvement. Steve Allison, plate discipline. Dave Ackley, we're going to put on a generate bat speed program. We were disappointed in his home runs this year, just 6 in 356 at-bats. We think there's a little more potential there, and we've signed him to a long-term deal, so we'll see how that works. Arturo Uresti, the top prospect in our organization, going to work on his contact. Doug Weiss, as we touched upon earlier, secondary pitch improvement. Shiloh Solas, another top prospect in our organization, going to work on his contact. Joe Harmon, plate discipline. Chuck Huntley, improving his control. Trace Aldana, improving his pitch movement. Greg Moreno, plate discipline. These guys are all minor leaguers we're talking about now. Wilson Pedraza, try to hit more homers. Luis Coronado, more hits. Omari Raphael, going to work on secondary pitch improvement. Guy that we picked out of Piedmont College, 22nd overall. If we can get that stuff a bit better by working on some of these out pitches, still have hope that he might be useful at the major league level, but it's certainly not assured at this point. Eric Wilcox, former first-round pick, going to hope for an outstanding result, improving his control. And then our new addition, Gigolo O'Banner, going to work on secondary pitch improvement there. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that changeup got a little bit better. Who knows what he'll end up actually working on in this offseason. But that is the high-level plan for the player development lab, and we'll certainly be checking in on that more as the offseason moves along. We also just completed our second training camp with international amateur free agents. Since we didn't spend any time on this when the pool was released in the previous episode, we will take a quick look at some of the top prospects here. Jorge Carreno, interesting third baseman prospect, has a really nice arm, nickname the Flamethrower, and looks like he could be a pretty useful bat if he fully develops. Jorge Guerra, another 16-year-old with a pretty solid looking bat. Looks more like a corner outfielder than a center fielder to me. Luis Picon, 16-year-old right-handed pitcher. Like some of the personality traits, looks more like a back of the rotation starter most likely, but you never know. He's young, but he's got a lot of work to do to get his pitch arsenal to be full major league quality. Jorge Galicia, a definitely more well-balanced pitching prospect. In theory, his stuff, his movement and control could all be well above average. Could have a 4-pitch arsenal if everything works out, but a lot of work to do to get there. Juan Ortega, 17-year-old shortstop, pretty interesting bat. He's not really a shortstop at this point, but who knows what his defensive ratings could look like years from now. As Noglegs likes to note with those development lab programs in the development lab, there is a pretty good opportunity to improve the defensive skills of a lot of the players in your organization. And it's not just Noglegs who's mentioned that over the years, but he has most recently made that point, which is a good one. Daniel Quezada, third baseman, another pretty interesting bat, and he's got kind of a third baseman's profile with that glove. Juan Ramirez, 16-year-old right fielder, like the durability, looks like a pretty interesting bat, high work ethic, respectable corner outfielder. Mauricio Rocha, 16-year-old center fielder, another guy who could have a nice contact power combination if everything works out. Bellamino Soenga, really like the home run power with him, contact, and in some cases his eye, not quite as good as some of the other hitting prospects we've seen, but he's got as much home run power potential as anyone in this class. And then third pitcher, David Tienda, Blue Tienda, like some of the personality traits, potential 3 or 4 pitch arsenal, got a lot of work to do to get there. Think his stuff, his movement and control could all be above average if things work out perfectly, but as we know, particularly with 16-year-old starting pitchers, things rarely work out perfectly. But some interesting players that we've scouted a couple times in person now. Probably will be making some changes to who we bring to camp over the next couple of months in December and January before we start making decisions, but it's very conceivable that one of the guys that we've just talked about ends up being our primary target in January when the IAFA signing period opens up. So if you've got any initial thoughts, always helpful for me to hear from the worldwide scouting department. And we started to get a lot of those arbitration-eligible players signed. Brady Harris for a little less than $14 million in what will likely be his second and final year in Oakland before he makes a ton of money in free agency. The fans are ecstatic that we brought him on board, and that was plus 4 points, so that was positive. That puts us up to 70 in fan interest, which is as high as we've ever been. R.J. Cope, Jaden Boakai, Andy Brailovsky also signed their extensions. I guess the fans were also pleased with Brailovsky, so he may have been a small amount of that 4-point increase. And we did get Kevin Patterson signed to that extension. So that is positive, and I can show you the details now. He was heading into his first arbitration-eligible year, and we've ended up signing him for 7 years, $43 million. His arbitration number for this year was much less than $5 million. Was going to be a little more than that the next couple of years, so not a completely front-loaded contract, but we're definitely going to be paying him more this year. The $9 million at age 32 has a team option on it, so we're really on the hook for $5 to $7 million a year for him for the next few years. If he ends up as a kind of fourth starter, it doesn't hurt us too much. If he ends up being more of a 3, it's probably decent value for us. It's not going to be a Jake Ortega type contract in terms of the excess value that it generates, but he did well in his first few months with us. He's a guy who, over the course of his major league career at this point, has been an above average pitcher as far as his ERA plus and his FIP minus, and our hope is that he will continue to be a solid contributor to the rotation and someone we can count on now through several of his free agency potential years. And we were doing a lot of cleanup of the 40-man roster, and I did offline shop all of these guys, some familiar names: Israber Stewart, Ted Johnston, Josh Mangano, Chris Clow, Oswaldo Linares, Ian Outh. They all had literally no trade value when I shopped them. Literally nothing. And in some cases, when I was putting trades together, trying to add them in, they actually had negative value. But apparently for free, there's a lot of interest in some of those players. So felt like with a new crop of guys that we might need to protect in the Rule 5 draft this year based on their service time, and the fact that we are going to be looking to add some guys ourselves, hopefully in the Rule 5 free agency and the trade market over the next few months. Wanted to try to clean up the roster, and all of these guys are guys who were out of options, so we were basically going to have to be guaranteeing major league money to somebody that we were going to have to, in all probability, get through waivers in the spring anyways. So felt like it made sense to just get the $740,000 minimum contracts that they all had off of our books, and we'll at least have, with the departures of all of these guys, $4 or $5 million extra to play with in the off season that hopefully we'll ultimately be able to use a little more effectively than on 4A guys who are only going to be contributing at the major league level if something went really wrong for us. Positively, we did get a new bench coach signed. Our bench coach had retired at the end of the season. Brought in David Smith. He was in AA for the Altoona Curve, so we gave him an opportunity to leave his previous organization and join us as a major league bench coach. Excellent with development, legendary with mechanics, good with aging. He's only average at in-game running, but excellent at catching and infield defense, good with outfield defense. We also expect him to have a good relationship with the players on our team, and his personality fits in well with the rest of the coaching staff. So we felt like he was the best option out there when we perused who was available to bring on board as a new bench coach for the A's this year. And we have started signing a number of our minor league free agents as well. Luis Taveras, it came down to Taveras or Lara as far as who we were going to bring back as a potential fifth outfielder next year. And Taveras is a right-handed hitting guy who's played primarily against left-handed pitching for us over the last 3+ years. He's put up a 112 WRC plus over the course of his career. You look at his 162 game average, 27 homers, 80 ribbies, 260 hitter. He's a useful player. He's going to be cheaper than Lara at $2.3 million. I don't know that Taveras is in our long-term plans. We've got guys like Arturo Uresti and Sergio Palomares, young outfielders who have come up through our organization who are getting close to being ready for the majors. But for one more year at the number that he was looking for, I think it made sense to bring Taveras back over Lara, who's better defensively but wrecked physically, more expensive, and worse offensively. So I think the hope as we think about this team and what we would do at center field, Jake Ortega is obviously our everyday center fielder right now. Brady Harris can certainly man the position next year in a pinch, and I think in spring training we're we're going to at least play Bobby Cabral there regularly. With the 55 range, it's not perfect, but with Lara gone, we're going to need at least one more option out there, and it would make Burner Cabral slightly more valuable if he's able to pitch in for us from time to time and hopefully play a not embarrassing center field if we need him to. And we moved ahead to the start of the awards period. We did also get a trade offer from the Texas Rangers. They're looking for our ace, Jackson Ferris, who is going to be our highest priced player next year. They're willing to give us 22-year-old minor league outfielder Jimmy Dewberry, who looks, quite honestly, even if he reaches his full potential, he's kind of the definition of mid. When you look at his batting ratings, his speed and bunting ratings, his defensive ratings, I don't think we're going to trade our ace for your former 11th round draft pick, Texas. Trades like that are probably why you are one of the dominant teams in baseball over the past few years, but we are not going to help you execute on that. Taking a look at the Gold Glove winners, and Brady Harris, who we were just talking about, a guy who we think could pinch in for us from time to time in center field, just won the third Gold Glove of his career. He's won 2 in right field, and he won a Gold Glove this year for us in left field while hitting .260 with 31 homers, scored almost 100 runs, and drove in over 80 for us. Hopefully he'll be just as productive offensively next year. Our former shortstop, Brian Rincon, wins his second Gold Glove, and he's now a back-to-back Gold Glove Award winner for the Los Angeles Angels organization. And we did technically get another award winner this year, Luke Little, with the Mariano Rivera Award. We've obviously traded him away now, but it was split voting between him, Pat Wade, Garrett Johnson, and Emmanuel Clase. As I talked about earlier, nothing wrong with the way Luke Little has pitched in the 2 years that he's been with us, but with the financial position we found the team in this year and the fact that we're still going to try to be doing something to improve our starting pitching over the next several months, felt like having a little more financial flexibility made sense, even though we largely had to give him away, unfortunately. But we now have back-to-back Mariano Rivera Award winners for the Oakland A's, although last year's winner, Jeremy Scholl, is going to be the only one who's back with us next year, with Luke Little already gone. And another day, another set of awards announced, and some more award winners for the Oakland A's. Not surprisingly, Jake Ortega, Silver Slugger in center field for a second consecutive year. He, of course, was the league MVP a year ago with a monster season, was arguably just as good, if not better, offensively this year, putting up the first 30-30 season of his career, although his WAR was a bit lower, and don't know that he's going to go back-to-back as an MVP, but he did go back-to-back as a Silver Slugger. Our rental designated hitter/first baseman, Luis Lujan, who combined for 39 homers with the Red Sox and us, also a Silver Slugger this year for the second time in his career. He will be the big hit that we take in the free agent market this offseason when he moves on to much greener pastures than we are able to provide, as he's looking for 9 years at about $35 million a year, and that is just not a number that I have any interest in even thinking about approaching here with the Oakland A's. Would love to have him back. He's a great slugger who's led the AL in home runs 2 of the last 4 years. Did a nice job while we had him on board, but we always knew he was going to be a rental for us. And unfortunately, we didn't win any of the big awards this year. I had been talking like Alejandro Landin was a candidate for the Rookie of the Year, but clearly his service time was a little bit too high because as nice a year as Jesus Zamora had, hitting 304, 23 homers, 83 ribbies, and a 4.4 WAR. I think Landin certainly would have deserved the award over him, so I guess I just hadn't paid close enough attention to the amount of service time that Landin had in previous seasons for us. 129 at-bats in 2034, and I guess just a little bit too much either service time or playing time, but still love what he did for us in his first full season in the majors. 268 average, 35 homers, 90 ribbies, put up a 4.7 WAR for us. Certainly would expect that if he had been eligible for the award, he certainly would have gotten some attention. Bobby Garland, who we mentioned earlier, we've got him in a control program. If we somehow get a lucky outstanding result there, that could make him a lot more valuable. Former fourth-round pick is durable, pretty good stuff, decent movement on his pitches, and he put up a 2.62 ERA for us over 96 innings, primarily as a reliever, but he was starting for us down the stretch, and young Mr. Garland did receive a vote from somebody for Rookie of the Year. Taking a look at the big awards, Steve Genus of the Texas Rangers is your Cy Young Award winner here in 2035. Back-to-back Cy Young Award wins for the young Rangers superstar. 19-5 record, led the league in ERA and WHIP for a second consecutive season. Steve Tudor, Kansas City's great young pitcher, who also is a two-time Cy Young Award winner, but it's been a while since he won. Led the American League in innings pitched this year with a 2.43 ERA and an 18-8 record to finish second. Over in the National League, Mike Ramsey is your Cy Young Award winner. 16-8 record, 2.93 ERA, over 200 strikeouts, 73% quality starts, and an NL Best 5.9 WAR among pitchers. He edged a large crew of players, including our old friend Andres Rojas, the knuckleballer. American League MVP this year, Wyatt Langford of the Texas Rangers, and that is the 5th MVP award for Wyatt Langford. Led the AL in runs, home runs, ribbies, slugging percentage, and batter WAR this year for the world champion Texas Rangers. Ben Giddens and the Cy Young Award winner Steve Genus are the guys who got other votes. Jake Ortega, our MVP winner from a year ago, finished 4th in the balloting this year. Luis Lujan, our rental, also got some votes as well. Over in the National League, Mike Ramsey, your Cy Young Award winner, is your unanimous National League MVP. That is something that I think we used to see a lot more frequently 30, 40 years ago in real baseball. Relatively infrequent these days to have a Cy Young Award winner / MVP, but Mike Ramsey does that this year for the Atlanta Braves. The top vote getter among position players was first baseman Josh Higbee of the Phillies. Led the league with 197 hits. Also hit 329 with 42 homers and 124 ribbies, a 7.2 WAR, 170 WRC plus. So a huge year for Mr. Higbee, but people had a lot of respect for what Mike Ramsey did on the mound this year. And with that, we just have a few more things till the end of this episode, heading towards salary arbitration and free agency over the next few days. We've got all of the arbitration offers that we're going to make handled. We'll check in one last time if there's any value at all for Mr. Gabe Brewster. And you see nothing in return for him. to even be spending $2 million on him in arbitration next year. When we picked him up, we liked that he could start or relieve. We liked that he was popular with the fans and had a lot of positive personality traits. We didn't love that he was likely to give up a lot of home runs, and he certainly did that for us this year. For $2 million, there's still part of me that wants to bring him back, but over the course of this playthrough, right-handed pitchers who struggle to keep the ball in the park haven't performed particularly well for us in Oakland. So we'll let Mr. Brewster head out to free agency along with Pat Maloney, and obviously Lujan will be hitting free agency as well. And we've made it to the start of free agency. As I talked about earlier, we're hoping that there might be a difference-making starting pitcher, and you can see there are 3 starting pitchers on the list. We'll look at them last, keep the suspense up a little bit. Ernesto Herrera, left fielder. Hey, he's got the Hidero Endo. Bobby Cabral, Byron Brain profile. Great personality. Looking for $12 million unless he lingers on the market for a long time and the price comes down a lot. I don't think we will be moving forward with him. First baseman Federico Lafuente El Guante out of Cuba. Another guy with pretty good home run power. A little bit more well-balanced in his ability to make contact and avoid strikeouts, but also looking for over $12 million. Let's hope one of these pitchers is a real interesting starter who's not looking for a ton of money. That would be fantastic. Doesn't necessarily look like there's any real difference makers among those pitchers or broadly among the international free agents, though. We'll take a look at the actual free agents here and taking a look at the front office with the guys that we've moved on from, with the savings we had from some of the contracts that we signed with arbitration-eligible players. We've got money to spend. Again, it's going to be focused on a 1-year contract most likely, but hopefully there will be someone who wants to come and play with us for a year, or perhaps we'll continue perusing the market and seeing if there's anyone in a last year of a contract that a team ends up wanting to move on from, either over the course of this offseason or early next year when the games actually begin. Taking a look at who actually made it to free agency this year. Among the batters, largely the names we expected: Jackson Holliday, Pete Crow Armstrong, Luis Lujan, Bobby Witt Jr., Moises Ballesteros, Harry Ford, among the big names. Julio Rodriguez also out there. So certainly some interesting players that could have a pretty significant impact, but in most cases the price tags for those players are going to be more than we can afford. And honestly, I feel like we probably only got 1 or 2 slots among position players that are really even in question at this point for the 26-man roster, unless we have some injuries. Arguably, utility infielder is kind of the only spot that we have open if everything goes well and everything is healthy and everyone kind of comes out of the development lab in spring training looking the way that we hope they will look or better. Spencer Strider, certainly the most interesting free agent out there, looking for $28.4 million, and he's wrecked physically. If he was willing to think about a 1-year contract, we'd probably have to think about it. Unfortunately, he's looking for 5 years at $28.4 million. So for a wrecked 37-year-old, that definitely takes him out of play for us. You can see there's also some relievers looking for some pretty good money. Justin Lampkin, who's unmotivated with a pretty bad personality, 13-7 with a 3.96 ERA for Cincinnati last year. So solid performance, but the money he's looking for I don't think is going to work for us. You can see a lot of relievers among the more highly regarded players that are on the market this year, but we'll explore offline a lot more depth who is actually available in the market. We're going to continue looking for some trades. A little disappointed that we haven't been able to pull anything more significant off than bringing on Kamani O'Bannon. Do think that he can potentially help us, but we kind of felt like this was going to be an off season where we were going to need to fix the financial situation of this team, and I feel like we have, at least for the next 11 months, generally fixed the financial position of this team. You can tell by looking at our money for extensions, though, that we've got a lot of obligations due next year potentially, and we might need to be making some more salary dump moves a year from now. But right now we've got the flexibility to add some talent as this offseason begins. The big question is whether we'll find it in the trade market, the free agent market, or will we have to be patient and just wait until the season begins and hope that there's someone interesting on the trade block come June and July of next year. And we will start finding the answers to some of those questions in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.